As we're starting to see a rise in more bad actors in the publishing space, specifically in the audiobook narrator space, we need to have a conversation about the contractual side of getting away from those bad actors. Today, we're going to be talking to everybody's favorite IP and entertainment lawyer, Tony, as we discuss what authors and publishers should be doing if the audiobook narrator that has recorded that audiobook does something, if there are allegations against them, if something's going on that result in less sales for the author or a complete boycott of those audiobooks. So let's take a look at what's going on and what you need to know, what you need to look for, and how you can protect yourself.
My name is Tony Oikasas. I'm an adjunct professor of entertainment law and IP at New York Law School, and I have an Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok account called The IP Professor that's dedicated to all things intellectual property.
Tony, when it comes to working with audiobook narrators, we know it's incredibly important to make sure we have a good, solid contract to protect both the author and their works and the audiobook narrator or narrators. Can you talk to us a little bit about those contracts and things we should be looking for in the case that an audiobook narrator ends up doing some things that we don't particularly love in the industry and we need to get away from that communication with them, away from that connection with them, and out of that contract?
Yeah, there are umpteen ways to approach this. Obviously, it goes without saying that you want to make sure that if you are ever in this type of situation, that you immediately talk to a lawyer to help you navigate all options that are presented to you on the table. And even before there's a scandal that happens, that you're already working with a lawyer to make sure that whatever contract you're signing with a company, an audiobook narration company or any publisher, that lawyer can help redline and review all the terms to make sure that your rights are enforced. But let's talk more specifically about the scenario. There are a lot of ways to go forth with something like, terminating a deal or sort of seeking some sort of remedy when something, of a great degree of gravity happens that could affect your business and even your royalty revenue share related to your audiobook. So first things first, I think one clause that might be helpful is actually looking at a reverse morals clause. And we've talked about morals clauses before. Reverse morals clauses are exactly what they sound like. The traditional nature of a morals clause is that a celebrity, a brand, an athlete, public figure, and even including authors, because there can be a clause like this in a publishing agreement, but all those people are bound by basically, not engaging in any activity that is scandalous, illegal, immoral, obviously felonious. And if they do, if let's say celebrity or athlete or, author X does engage in any sort of activity that is scandalous, illegal, immoral, deceptive, whatever, that can give the brand or the corporate entity reason to terminate that relationship between the celebrity, the public figure, and themselves. And it's a very easy way to kind of get out. You don't have to show cause. I mean, there is the cause shown, but it's like a no questions asked type of way of backing out of the deal. We've seen this time and time again with a lot of celebrities and athletes for sure, where they have done something that was illegal, or they were, charged with a crime or convicted of a crime, and that led to a termination of a deal with the brand. But I will say oftentimes morals clauses do operate on a very subjective basis. The brand, if they think, in their opinion, that the entity committed something that was scandalous, immoral, deceptive, or, even was just charged with a crime but wasn't convicted, that gives them free rein to be able to terminate under the morals clause. Now, in that vein, the reverse morals clause is exactly what it sounds like. The inverse happens, though. It's the athlete, the celebrity, the public figure can back out of the deal with the brand if the brand does something that is illegal, deceptive, immoral, scandalous, felonious, whatever it is. So we actually saw the rise of reverse morals clauses thanks to the FTX disaster that happened in the finance industry, where basically, Sam Bankman-Fried was basically operating a crypto Ponzi scheme, if you will. And there were tons of athletes that were adversely affected because they had been spokespersons for FTX. They appeared even in Super Bowl commercials. And when users of FTX lost money, they sued not only FTX, but they also sued the athletes who endorsed the product. So out of that whole scandal became kind of like an industry-wide standard that now if a celebrity or an athlete or a public figure is going to work with the brand, they want to ensure that there's a reverse morals clause to ensure some level of protection for that public figure. So I would say if you're an author and you're working with, any sort of audiobook narration company or publisher or anything else, you may want to see if your lawyer can weave in a term about a reverse morals clause. That would be very protective of you. The other thing to consider is see if there's some type of cure clause. Cure clauses are I love them because, and I use them all the time in my license agreements, whenever I work on them, because the premise of a cure clause is that it almost is extending an olive branch. It is a way of mitigating before, rising to the level of a full-fledged breach of contract lawsuit between two parties. The premise of a cure clause is that if something happens that could amount to a breach of a contract, you have X amount of days, 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, however it's customizable, but you have a certain amount of days to cure the breach, meaning to correct the error. And then if that's not corrected, then you can move forward with a breach of contract claim. So with an author, let's say, in this circumstance, let's say is working with a narration company where the narrator has been, has narrated a ton of books for various authors, and that person engaged in legal scandals and immoral activity that caused this world, this wide boycott, and a lot of authors are adversely affected. Surely that could be an opportunity for the author to invoke the cure clause. Say, well, you're not, I feel like there's a breach of contract because the services aren't being rendered here. I'm not making money. There isn't active marketing and I'm being adversely affected. So maybe there could be an opportunity to cure it by, let's say, having those authors' books narrated by someone else. Maybe that would be the cure to the breach that could be resolved within a certain number of days. And then you immediately de-escalate and mitigate what could be a breach of contract claim to just what was at its base level an inquiry. So I would say cure clauses are something to bear in mind. And then it goes without saying, you may want to see if you have just your typical language for a termination clause. If you feel like your business isn't going to work with this audio narration company or any business, and you just want to take your business elsewhere, hey, that's the beauty of a free marketplace. You can go shop around elsewhere. And if the termination clause does contain some type of out that allows you to freely get out of a contract and go elsewhere, surely you may want to consider that as an option. Be mindful, you don't want to sign any non-compete clauses. You don't want to agree to any non-compete agreements, period, because they are very restrictive, and oftentimes they bar a lot of people from being able to freely do work in a specific industry. The good news is that a lot of states have deemed non-compete clauses or agreements to be overly broad and sometimes illegal. So the law could work in your favor if you were induced to sign that type of agreement, but you just want to be mindful of it. And obviously a lawyer's review is going to be very helpful in something like that. But all that to say, there are plenty of options out there. It's just a matter of reviewing the contract. And again, I say it once, I say it twice, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. A lawyer's help is always going to be helpful in something like this, to be able to redline and review whatever terms are there that will help you, the author, get out of a contract that you feel is adversely affecting you and your business.
And Tony, when we go over these contracts with our lawyers, do you feel like we need to be very specific about putting a time frame in that? Because oftentimes we see these things come up and it affects people who are immediately touched by whatever situation is going on. The people who have books coming out, the ones who recently had it out. But what about people who had them 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Is there a time frame that we need to specify, or is there a time frame that could potentially be running out?
That's a great question. I think it's going to vary depending on each author. There really isn't like a cookie cutter model of like, if you're at the 5-year threshold, this time period applies, or if your book is 10 years old, it's this time period. I really think it's going to be personal to the author and what they want. And I'm also of the mindset that, you want a quick resolution at all times. So you don't really want to prolong that cure clause. You don't want to prolong any sort of like time frame. I think having something that is short, quick, and effective puts a little bit of, lights the fire under the company, and it also does put some sort of obligation on the company's plate to make sure that they expeditiously resolve an issue with an author, however old that content is, or however old the book is. So I think it's going to be very much more personal to the author, less so of it being sort of an industry standard kind of thing.
And of course, we want to make sure that if you are in this situation, that you are having clear communication with the people around you. If it's happening to you, it's probably happening to other people. So get your lawyer involved, go through those contracts, make sure they've checked things before you sign it, and bring them in when these scandals start to come up. But your community is going to be your strongest supporter. Finding other people who are in this situation who can come together and have these collective conversations can move the dial for you. It can actually change the trajectory of how things are going to be handled for you and for everybody involved. And it's also important to note that when these scandals happen and it isn't impacting many people, we do have a great underground whisper network of authors who come together to help you navigate this and to make sure you're not losing a huge amount of sales or having this detrimentally hurt your career. We are here to help and to support. You just have to make sure you reach out to us so that we can help guide you on this process, get you connected to the right people, and make sure that we're making the effort to grow the industry instead of holding the industry back. Now, as always, if you have questions on the legal side of publishing, Tony's coming back for upcoming episodes. We have a massive playlist with really great recommendations and advice, so we'll link that down below for you. But if you have things that we haven't covered yet, or if you're seeing new scandals or new situations pop up, let us know about them. Sometimes you hear about it before us, and we want to make sure we get you the most up-to-date information as quickly as possible. So reach out. If you don't want to do it publicly, you can always email me or DM me, and we will get episodes made for you. And as always, you can reach out to Tony on his social media. Tony, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at the IP Professor, and you can check out my entertainment law podcast called End Scene, with new episodes dropping every Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Drop your questions down below because Tony's coming back for more episodes on the legal side of the publishing space, and we have a ton of really great informational pieces that we will link in the playlist down below. But we want to make sure as situations come up that we're getting your questions answered. And every single day we're dropping new videos to help you navigate the world of publishing, from your writing to your publishing to your marketing, to make this your most profitable year ever with the least amount of stress and overwhelm and time commitment on your content creation, so this can be your most profitable year while you're living your best life and living out your author dreams. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.